Jacqui O'Sullivan is Telkom's Managing Executive for Communications. She's now in the studio to talk about the job cuts that are coming at Telkom. Hi Jacqui, perhaps just give us the picture here. There's a number of 4,000 something that's now been mentioned. Just give us the bigger context before we get into it.
So David, as you know, 2 years ago we initiated a Telkom turnaround. So when our new CEO arrived, we really looked at what are the immediate actions that could be taken. So we did the short, quick, low-hanging fruit people like to talk about. Renegotiated contracts, sorted out procurement, did a management restructure, and that has delivered some really good returns. And we saw that on Monday when you spoke with the CEO. But the next step is to really tackle how the business operates. The business is over 140 years old. It's cumbersome. The operating model of Telkom currently is not going to survive in the telecommunication industry.
It's still like an old civil service model.
It is still like an old civil service model. So what we were speaking of on Monday and what we initiated in our discussions with Labour yesterday in our restructuring forum was how do we restructure the company? How do we create an operating model that's going to allow Telkom to, first of all, compete in this highly competitive market, but then also be set up for future growth and sustainability so that we can be the telecommunications operator that we know South Africa needs.
Okay, before Viv comes in, just give us this number here, because I think the total employed is 19,000. 4,000 something is a big chunk of that.
So we're currently sitting about 18,000 employees, and this current tranche that we're looking at is within the wholesale space. So as we look at splitting the business into three areas, being the retail space, the enterprise space, and then the wholesale and network space, we're specifically looking at a number of 4,400. Now that would be specifically looking at voluntary severance, voluntary early retirement, and then potentially down the line the retrenchment option. But on the other side, we're looking at about 3,400 people. And where we'd like to see is how we can retain those skills to the South African economy. We need those skills. It's not just Telkom who needs those skills. So what we'd like to look at is how can we look at an option with Labour whereby we have an outsourcing option, and then the second would be an enterprise development model. So we take the Future Makers program that we have within Telkom, which is already backed by 100 million rand, take those Telkom employees who have the skills that we need, but also skills that other fixed line operators in the country need, and turn that into a business model.
Speaking of other fixed line operators, they've been under, I think you by far are still the majority in the market, and you obviously the biggest player. But speaking about the future of the company, beyond basically the retrenchments we're going through right now, where does Telkom see itself in like the next 5 years? Where would it be placed in the economy? What does it envision as being the demand for its services?
You know, fixed lines are 10 years ago, fixed lines were exiting. We know that voice is exiting. We know that there's a decline in voice. But fixed lines are where we're at. Fixed lines are what people are looking for, because fixed lines is where you can get the fiber and where you can get the high speeds. We know we can own the home. We know we can create that connected space. We know we can go into business and we can provide that comprehensive solution. People want a one-stop shop. People want one bill. You don't want a bill for your son's iPad, for your daughter's iPad, for your fiber into your home. You want it consolidated, and we believe we've got that converged solution. But the competition is really fierce. And in order for us to up our game to be able to compete in that environment,
I think
we need to change.
It's ironic that you got rid of the Vodacom connection, what was that, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and have never really caught up to Vodacom and MTN. So what you've actually got to do is not try and catch them up, but to do other things better.
Exactly, and we've seen that de-risking the mobile business has really served us well, and we're seeing that we're breaking even, we're seeing that we're able to actually provide a dividend, but the trick now is for us to make sure that what we're best at, which is that fixed line space, we've got to own it. And in order to own it, you've got to be agile. You know, a good example is that 18 months, 2 years ago, a community went out on tender for fiber to the community, and there were 3 applicants. A couple of weeks ago, Constantia went out. There were 25 different companies that came in for that same space. So this is a booming industry, but your ability to perform is based on your agility, how quickly you can get your people out, how quickly you can solve your problems, and that's where we need to move to.
You speak about fiber to the home, but also Telkom, I think, just launched a new uncapped LTE service as well. So obviously you aren't taking your eye totally off the Wi-Fi, also the wireless market as well. What's your focus in terms of wireless data going forward?
Absolutely. The LTE space is really an exciting space, because what we're really looking for is high-speed broadband penetration. That's what we're looking for. There's a direct correlation that we've seen everywhere in the world and across Africa between the amount of broadband penetration and the increase in the GDP. We know that to be true. So LTE is another great way for us to get there without the cable connections. And what we've seen in the offer, the LTE offer that we made last week, where we have capacity on base stations, we want to make that available. And it's quite an innovative approach. It's an auction. It's not been done before in this country, but it's exciting, and we've got a few more that we're going to be rolling out over the next few weeks and months.
Let's go back to those job cuts. Now you've talked about 4,000 and another 3,000, which you might ameliorate with the enterprise development side, but it's still uncertainty, it's still change, it's a loss of people who've been working there. Now that adds up to 7,000 out of 18. This is big change for an organisation. The danger is you demoralise the organisation. There's uncertainty. People are looking over their shoulders. The good people resign because they're not sure if they're going to be kept. That must be difficult.
Such an important point. People often talk about job cuts, and I always come back to people to say, these aren't jobs, these are people. These are people, these are families, these are communities that are impacted. The way we approach it is looking at it from a social plan for a start, to see not just a voluntary severance packages. How do we prepare people, whether it's through studies, whether it's through an additional injection of cash to put into a new business. That's an important point that has to be made. Very importantly, this has to be phased. We can't do this in one go. We'll collapse the organisation, and that's why we're very clear on the timelines that need to be adopted here. And then finally, we need to make sure that we identify the talent in the organisation. As you've said, this is a highly competitive space. We're going to keep our best people, and we're spending a lot of time speaking to our people and making sure they understand the journey that we've been on, because we've got another 3 years ahead of us, at least, of this multi-year plan.
Because we have to assume that you're not offering retrenchments and then the best people are allowed to take them. I mean, that's what government departments do.
It's a mistake that many companies make, and we're absolutely not going to do that.
We'll have to end it there. Thanks to Viv Govender, who's Senior Analyst at Lahuma Capital, and Jacqui O'Sullivan for coming in from Telkom in tough times, in one sense, for Telkom. She's the Managing Executive for Communications.